My wife, Liu Ruyan, is the perfect wife and mother in everyone's eyes. But at a dinner party, she actually peeled shrimp for her junior, Makoto Ito, right in front of everyone. Makoto looked a bit embarrassed and said, "Senior, I can do it myself." But Ruyan replied, "How could I let you? You're allergic to the shells. Last time you peeled them, your hands swelled up like balloons. Haven't you learned your lesson?" I couldn't help but sigh inwardly. What a perfect wife, picking the perfect time to show it. Just as everyone waited to see my reaction, I didn't lose my temper at all. Instead, I just kept laughing and chatting with our partners. That is, until we got home. I tapped my fingers on the table, and told Ruyan to get on her knees. I threw 10 pounds of shrimp right in front of her, and said, "Stay on your knees and peel every single one." I've always been pretty satisfied with my arranged marriage. Liu Ruyan, she comes from a clean background, has an impressive resume, and always knows exactly what to say. Since we got married, she's never stayed out all night. She isn't clingy, and she isn't stubborn. Whenever she stands beside me, she always knows exactly what to say, and what not to ask. To the outside world, she is the flawless Mrs. G. Gentle, considerate, and perfectly well-mannered. I valued that about her. Not out of love, but because it just made my life easier. You see, I'm a bit of a neat freak. And I don't just mean with my surroundings. I mean it with my relationships, too. I absolutely hate messy drama. So, for the past 2 years of our marriage, I've always given her plenty of respect. She wanted a glamorous lifestyle, so I gave it to her. She wanted her own social circle, and I never got in her way. That is, until that dinner. It was supposed to be a perfectly normal get-together. Just 3 or 4 friends from the industry, along with her old professor and a few of his students. We sat at a big table, with a huge spread of food. The vibe wasn't exactly wild, but it wasn't dead, either. Makoto Ito was one of those students. He was Ruyan's junior from university, 3 years younger than her, and still working on his master's degree. He wasn't very tall, and he spoke in this soft, quiet little voice. Whenever he talked to people, he always had this sort of eager-to-please attitude. I'd seen him a few times before. Every time we met, he'd stand up and respectfully call me Senior G. His tone was always humble, but his eyes always lingered just a little too long on Ruyan. I never really cared. Guys like him? They weren't even worth a second thought to me. Anyway, the food came out quickly that night. When the shrimp was served, Ruyan completely naturally slipped on a pair of plastic gloves. She peeled those shrimp like a pro. It wasn't the clumsy fumbling of someone who rarely does it. It was pure muscle memory. She pinched the shell, gave it a gentle pull, and the meat popped out perfectly intact. Even the little tail was perfectly preserved. But when she finished that first shrimp, she didn't put it in her own bowl. Instead, she reached across the table, and dropped it right onto Makoto's plate. The movement was so smooth, so effortless, without a single moment of hesitation. Makoto looked up, gave her a sweet little smile, and said, "Thanks, Senior." He sounded so totally natural, like this was just their normal routine. And in that exact moment, my chopsticks stopped in mid-air. At the table, some people were talking about projects. Someone was on the phone. No one noticed this scene. Liu Ruyan kept her head down, and peeled a second shrimp. And gave it to him again. By the time she peeled the third one, she didn't even need to look to see where he was. She just reached out her hand. Her direction perfectly accurate. I watched the shrimp shells pile up next to her hand, one by one. She looked so focused, with a faint, almost invisible smile on her lips. That wasn't just being polite. It was a habit. I didn't say a word. I didn't even look at her. I just slowly put my chopsticks down, took a sip of water, and etched this scene into my mind. A lot of people think that if you don't blow up on the spot, everything is fine. But it's not. I was just confirming whether she was doing it unconsciously, or if she genuinely thought there was nothing wrong with it. After the dinner, I took her home just like usual. It was dead quiet in the car. She asked if I was tired. I just gave a slight yeah, and she didn't say another word. Once we got home, I washed my hands and changed my clothes, business as usual. She was in the kitchen pouring water to make tea. If it weren't for that bag of shrimp, I would have actually thought tonight was no different from any other. I sat on the couch, watching her bring the teacup over to me. As she bent down, her hair slipped down, looking incredibly tempting. I took the cup, but I didn't drink. Liu Ruyan, I called out her name. She looked up at me, her eyes perfectly innocent as she asked, "What's wrong, honey?" I stood up and placed the cup back on the coffee table. Then, word by word, I said, "Neil." She froze, and that pause wasn't out of fear. She just hadn't processed it yet. Shocked, she blurted out, "What did you say?" I didn't repeat myself. I just walked over, and pressed my hand against the back of her neck. The grip wasn't heavy, but I didn't give her the chance to pull away. She was forced down, and the moment her knees hit the floor, she realized something was seriously wrong. "Ji Boda, what the hell are you doing?" Her voice started shaking with panic. I didn't answer. I just made sure she was kneeling properly, then let go. Turned around, and walked into the storage room. A few minutes later, I came back out carrying a huge bag of shrimp. 10 pounds of it, fresh. The ice packs hadn't even fully melted yet. I dropped the bag right in front of her. The shrimp rattled heavily inside the plastic. As I spoke, the color completely drained from her face. Are you insane? Just because of that little thing today? She finally realized exactly what this was all about, as she yelled out. I was just helping my junior peel a few shrimp. Do you really have to act like this? She looked up at me, her eyes full of grievance and confusion. She said, you don't even like eating this stuff normally, right? She thought she had made a solid point. I crouched down, looked right into her eyes, and said, whether I eat it or not has absolutely nothing to do with who you peel them for. Her lips moved. She wanted to argue back, but no words came out. I threw the gloves down in front of her. I said, just like you did earlier. She didn't move right away. She was still waiting for me to soften up, waiting for me to calm down, waiting for this to turn into just another argument we could brush past. I stood up, didn't even look at her, and said, don't get up until you're done. She finally lowered her head and put on the gloves. The sound of shrimp shells cracking open echoed clearly through the living room. 1, 2, 3. Her movements were clumsy at first, but she slowly found her rhythm. Just as skillfully as she had at the dinner table. I sat to the side, flipping through my documents. I didn't rush her. Time dragged on. Her fingers started turning red, but she didn't dare to stop. Halfway through, she glanced up at me a few times. Every single time, I gave no response. She finally couldn't take it anymore, and snapped. What do you want from me? I closed my folder, looked at her, and said, I want you to remember one thing. Some actions aren't just helping out. Her eyes widened slightly. I stood up, looking down at her from above, and said, a woman with no sense of boundaries. If she can learn to behave, I'll make do with her. Her breath hitched. I continued, if she can't, I'll just replace her. As soon as those words dropped, she completely froze. A shrimp shell slipped from her hand, and hit the floor. I didn't say another word. That night, I made her peel all 10 pounds of shrimp. No yelling, no fighting, just a massive pile of shrimp shells all over the floor. Right before I turned off the light in my study, I took one last look at her. She was still kneeling there, her back straight as a board. It looked like pure stubbornness. Or maybe she was just forcing herself to hold on. When morning came, the house was dead silent. Liu Ruyan was in the kitchen frying eggs. The sizzling of the oil was incredibly soft. Like she was deliberately trying not to make a sound. She saw me walk out. Her hands paused for a second, then she quickly turned down the heat. She said, you didn't sleep much last night, did you? She pushed the plate toward me, her tone gentle as she spoke. How about heading to the office a little later today? I sat down. I didn't even look at her as I answered. Stick to the schedule. She nodded. She handed me my coffee and stood to the side, waiting for me to take my first sip, just like she always did. I didn't drink it. She quickly sensed something was wrong. Are you still mad? She gave a small smile, probing cautiously. I really wasn't paying attention yesterday. It won't happen again. Her tone was completely casual, as if she were brushing off some tiny, forgivable mistake. I pushed the coffee cup away and said, I'm leaving as soon as I finish eating. She froze for a second, then quickly caught herself. I already apologized to you. She lowered her voice. You can't just keep acting like this, can you? I didn't respond. The driver was already at the wheel. The whole ride was dead silent. She sat in the back seat, scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing up at me. Several times, she hesitated as if she wanted to speak but swallowed her words. When we reached the office building, I got out. She followed me out of the car. She asked, dinner together tonight? I glanced back at her and said, worry about your own plans first. She stood frozen in place, watching the car door close. The expression on her face slowly faded away. Once inside the office, I went about my day as usual, meetings, signing documents, clearing emails. The pace didn't change. I just casually adjusted a few of her access permissions along the way. Just before my lunch break, my assistant handed me a document and said, Mr. G, those projects you set up for your wife earlier, they've been put on hold. I nodded. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Liu Ruyan called me. I didn't pick up. 5 minutes later, she called again. I still ignored it, right before it was time to clock out. She showed up completely dressed up, her makeup flawless, looking like she was about to meet someone important. By the time the front desk called me, she had already been waiting for 10 minutes. I told them to send her up. When she walked into my office, she already looked pretty upset. She demanded, why aren't you answering my calls? I closed the file in front of me, looked up at her, and said, I was in a meeting. She shot back, I sent you messages. I saw them. She stood right in front of my desk, refusing to sit down. Then why didn't you reply? Liu Ruyan demanded. I stared right at her, my voice completely flat. There was no need. She furrowed her brows and said, Ji Boda, we are married. She continued, giving me the cold shoulder like this. What's the point? I leaned back in my chair. I didn't argue. She waited for a moment. Getting no response, her tone grew impatient. I already apologized for what happened yesterday. She insisted, and I told you I'd be more careful next time. What more do you want from me? I stood up, walked over to the window, and said, you think that was just a fight? She fell silent for a second, then replied, well, what else was it? We're a married couple. Couples fight all the time. I turned around to look at her. Speaking with a completely flat tone, I said, then just treat it like a fight. She visibly breathed a sigh of relief. She said, good enough for me. She gave a little smile and added, I knew you wouldn't hold a grudge over something so petty. She turned to leave, then remembered something and looked back to add, oh, right, I'm heading out of town tomorrow for a forum. Didn't you say I should fly first class? I was just trying to book the ticket. But the system said I don't have the authorization. I looked right at her and said, the trip is cancelled. The smile froze on her face. She asked, what? You don't need to go to the forum. She asked, why not? Her voice pitched up a little. My mentor recommended me for this. I've already accepted the invitation. I replied, you can still back out. She stared at me, as if trying to figure out if I was making a sick joke. Liu Ruyan furrowed her brows. You're interfering with my career. I didn't deny it. She started speaking faster. Haven't you always said you supported me? And now, just because of one stupid dinner, you're going to shut down all my plans? I walked back to my desk, picked up my jacket, and said, I'm not shutting them down. I'm taking them back. All the color instantly drained from her face. Liu Ruyan asked, what is that supposed to mean? I answered, it means, everything you're using right now, was given by me. And, I added, I'm taking it all back. I don't need a reason. Her breathing grew noticeably erratic. You can't do this to me, she stammered. I don't depend on you to survive. I gave her a single glance and said, perfect, then. I walked right out of the office, without giving her another chance to speak. That evening, she didn't come home. Early the next morning, I headed out as usual. The house was completely empty. The dining table was suspiciously clean. Around noon, my assistant notified me that a few transactions had been blocked by the system. Your wife tried swiping her card several times, he said, but none of them went through. I told him to just ignore it. Later that afternoon, Liu Ruyan sent a message, the card won't go through. I didn't reply. After a while, another message popped up, reading, did the system crash? I still ignored it. That evening, she came straight to the office. This time, she didn't wait for the receptionist to announce her. She barged right in, confronting me directly. What the hell are you trying to do? Her emotions were clearly boiling over. I signaled for my assistant to leave. Soon, it was just the two of us in the office. She glared at me, emphasizing every single word. Do you think this is funny? Watching my card get declined, watching my deals fall apart, and then watching me come crawling back to beg you. Does that give you a sick sense of accomplishment? I placed my phone on the desk and asked, didn't you think we were just having a little fight? She was choked by my words, then finally lowered her guard, saying, I never said you couldn't be mad, but handling it like this is way too much. I stood up, walked right up to her, and said, whether it's too much or not is for me to decide. She instinctively took a step back. Biting her lip, she said, I'm not some pet canary you keep in a cage. I don't need you controlling my every move. I have my dignity too. I looked at her, my voice deadpan. Is dignity earned by peeling shrimp for another man? Her face instantly turned bright red. You're bringing that up again? She asked, her voice trembling. I already explained it to you. It was just a casual gesture. I shot back, oh? Are you going to casually kiss someone tomorrow, too? She bit her lip, completely silenced. I walked back to my seat and reopened my files. You can keep pretending this is just a petty argument, I said. I don't expect you to understand. She stood there, motionless for a long time. Then she asked, so, when are you willing to restore everything for me? I asked, restore what? She replied, the cards, the flight tickets, and all those itineraries. She looked at me, pleading. There has to be a time limit, right? I looked up and said, when you stop treating a serious breach of principle as just an emotional tantrum. She froze, biting her lip. You're punishing me. I didn't deny it. The look in her eyes slowly turned distant. She whispered, you were never like this before. I closed the file, enunciating every word clearly. And you were never like this before, either. She opened her mouth, but in the end, nothing came out. After Liu Ruyan left, I had my assistant push back my evening business dinner by 30 minutes. I wasn't in a rush to go home. She was treating a fundamental issue of personal boundaries as if it were just a lover's quarrel. So, I dealt with it by the rules. And rules aren't established by yelling. Authority is established through action. My phone buzzed on the desk. An unknown number. I glanced at the caller ID location. Local. I picked it up. Is this Senior Ji? The voice on the other end was very soft. Dripping with forced politeness, the voice said, I'm Makoto Ito, Senior Liu's junior. I didn't say a word, as if afraid of the awkward silence. He quickly added, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'll just take a minute. I held the phone a bit further away from my ear, and kept flipping through my documents. I could hear him let out a clear sigh of relief. Makoto laughed nervously. About the dinner last night. I heard from Liu that you might have misunderstood things a bit, he said. Really, it was nothing. We're just in the same program. She just looks out for me a lot, that's all. I interrupted. Looks out for you enough to peel your shrimp? He froze for a second or two, clearly trying to find the right words. Then he scrambled to say, That's just because my hands get an allergic reaction. He quickly explained. If the seafood shells scratch me, I break out. I felt really bad about it. But she's just so nice. She didn't want me to feel awkward. So she just helped me out. I didn't laugh. I didn't argue, either. Bullshit like that wasn't even worth entertaining. And the smoother he sounded, the more obvious it was that he had rehearsed this. He pressed on. She's been in a really bad mood these past couple of days. She actually cares about you a lot. She's usually so proud at school, you know? Not many people can make her back down. After she got back last night, she kept trying to explain. Saying that you were really harsh on her, but that she's willing to change. That was crossing the line. He was defending her, speaking up for her, while subtly making me out to be the bad guy. I closed my file, my voice completely flat. Why are you telling me all this? What exactly is your point? He panicked, immediately backpedaling. No, nothing like that. I'm just worried that you two might end up fighting because of me. As if afraid I wouldn't buy it, his words started tumbling out faster. How about this? I'll keep my distance from her from now on. I'll handle all our project work through our advisor or the group chat. I won't reach out to her privately anymore. He sounded so incredibly reasonable. So reasonable, it felt like he was giving me orders. I ignored his little performance and just asked, Who told you to make this call? Another pause on the line. She doesn't know. He lowered his voice. I decided to do this myself. She's very proud. She hates airing out her personal life to other people. But seeing her so miserable, I just felt really bad for her. He framed his affection so subtly, making it sound entirely innocent. Yet unmistakably intimate. I switched the phone to my other hand. Makoto Ito. I called him by his full name. Yes, Senior Ji. I told him, as for your senior sister, it's not your place to interfere. He quickly replied, I know, I'm just worried you might misunderstand her. I paused, my tone ice cold as I said, whether it's a misunderstanding or not, it's not your place to explain. I continued, if you really feel that bad about it, there is one thing you can do. He asked immediately, please, tell me, next time you see me. Don't call me senior, we aren't that close. The breathing on the other end of the line noticeably hitched. He forced a smile and said, then, I'll call you Mr. G. He gave a dismissive hum, ready to hang up. But he hurriedly called out to me again, senior sister really is a good wife. She never messes around, she only took such good care of me. Because when I first joined the team, I was completely clueless. She guided me through so much, and I've always looked up to her like my own real sister. He emphasized the words real sister heavily, as if terrified someone wouldn't believe him. I hung up the phone. My assistant knocked and came in, handing me a guest list for the evening. Mr. G, for Mr. Chen's dinner party tonight. They mentioned Ms. Liu will be attending. I took the list, flipped through it casually, and sure enough, Liu Ruyan's name was right there in the guest column. And right next to it, there was a deliberate extra note, accompanied by a member of the university staff. I handed the list back and said, the location stays the same. The time stays the same too. My assistant nodded and walked out. I tossed my phone into the drawer and went back to work. At 7:40 that evening, I arrived at the restaurant. The private room was already packed. The food hadn't been served yet, but the atmosphere was already buzzing. Liu Ruyan was sitting near the center, wearing a dark green dress, holding her glass, and chatting with someone. With a perfectly composed smile on her lips. When she saw me walk in, her eyes instantly lit up. She stood up and said, You came. Her voice was incredibly soft. I thought you weren't going to show up. I completely ignored her comment, looking right past her, my eyes landing on the man standing beside her. Makoto Ito stood up as well, keeping his hands clasped in front of him. As stiff and nervous as a schoolboy. Mr. G. He greeted me cautiously, adding, Thank you so much for coming. I gave a brief nod, without giving him a second glance. Liu Ruyan, seemingly trying to close the distance between us, reached out to pull out a chair for me. I just pulled it out myself and sat down. Her hand froze in midair, then she nonchalantly pulled it back. And sat back down in her seat. Just then, Mr. Chen walked in holding a glass of wine. He clinked glasses with me first, then laughed and said, Mr. G, you picked a great time to show up. Ms. Liu brought her junior colleague along today. Word is, out of all the new hires at the school, he's young. And full of ideas. Figured it'd be a great chance for us to get to know him. Liu Ruyan gave a natural smile. Makoto really is outstanding. He works hard, and he knows his place. Makoto Ito immediately ducked his head. You flatter me, senior. He really played up the humble act. The dishes started rolling out. As usual, there was shrimp. Liu Ruyan's fingers twitched slightly on the table, like she was instinctively reaching for the plastic gloves, but she forced herself to stop. She looked up at me, a question in her eyes. I didn't give her any reaction. Her hand slowly retreated. She picked up her teacup and took a sip, her smile looking a little stiff. Makoto Ito, on the other hand, really knew how to make his presence known. He eagerly stood up to pour drinks for the older guys, and served them food. He didn't talk much, but every single word out of his mouth was about thanking his senior and praising her for taking care of him. Mr. Chen was loving it. He laughed and teased, "Ms. Liu, you really know how to mentor people. Hard to find young folks this polite nowadays." Liu Ruyan kept the smile on her face, but she kept shooting glances my way out of the corner of her eye. She was waiting to see if I would lose my temper. I didn't. I just kept eating, occasionally chiming in with some polite small talk. Makoto probably thought my silence meant I was a pushover, because he slowly started getting bolder. He walked over to me with his glass, leaned in, and said, "Let me offer you a toast too, sir." He went on, "I know you have high standards for my senior, and I know it's for her own good. But honestly, having to constantly put up a strong front outside just to make you look good, it gets pretty exhausting for her." He sounded so incredibly sincere, like his heart was just bleeding for Liu Ruyan. I raised my eyes, looked at him, and asked, "Are you too close?" He gave an awkward little laugh. "Well, we're from the same department, so we work together a lot." "Work together so much," I asked, "that you know exactly how exhausted she is? You sure seem to know a lot about what's going on in her head." His fingers tightened around his glass. His drink almost spilled over the rim. Liu Ruyan immediately cut in. "Ji Boda, Makoto was just checking in on me. He's just outspoken. Don't make a big deal out of it." She jumped to his defense so fast, it was like a knee-jerk reaction. She didn't even think twice before instinctively rushing to protect him. The private dining room went dead silent. The older executives exchanged looks. Nobody dared to say a word. They just kept their heads down and sipped their drinks, pretending they hadn't heard a thing. Makoto hurriedly tried to do damage control. I spoke out of turn. "I just feel like Senior carries a lot on her shoulders, and she keeps it all bottled up." I reached out, picked up my glass, and clinked it against his. "I'll drink the toast," I told him. "But there's absolutely no need for you to speak on her behalf ever again." He nodded frantically. "Right, of course." Liu Ruyan looked incredibly pale. She laughed, quickly changing the subject to the project. She talked about the university partnership, her tone much more eager than before. It was as if she was trying to completely erase the awkwardness from moments ago. Halfway through the meal, Mr. Chen brought up a recent joint research initiative, saying he needed to appoint a lead coordinator. Liu Ruyan immediately chimed in. "I can do it. Leave it to me." Mr. Chen looked over at me and asked, "What do you think, Mr. Ji? Can Ms. Liu handle the workload?" Without even looking at Liu Ruyan, I flatly replied, "She doesn't have the time." The private dining room fell completely silent once again. Liu Ruyan's smile completely froze on her face. She asked, "Why not?" I replied, my tone perfectly calm. "You already have more than enough on your plate." Liu Ruyan furrowed her brows. Her tone was stubborn. "I was the one who negotiated this project with the professor. It's only right that I take charge." Makoto Ito also looked up, looking as if he wanted to jump in and defend her, but he forced himself to hold back. Instead, he just set his glass down, putting on a show of looking incredibly indignant on her behalf. I completely ignored him. Instead, I just looked right at Mr. Chen, and said coolly, "We're changing the lead coordinator for this project. I will personally handle the arrangements." Mr. Chen's expression shifted slightly, but he quickly recovered with a laugh. "All right then, I feel much better leaving the arrangements to you, Mr. Ji." Liu Ruyan's grip on her glass tightened. I could literally see her chest heave. She was clearly triggered by what I just said. But in a setting like this, she didn't dare throw a tantrum. So, forcing her anger down, she flashed a sweet smile. "Then, I'll leave it up to you." Her words sounded perfectly obedient, but her eyes were absolutely as cold as ice. When the dinner finally wrapped up, Makoto Ito rushed ahead to hit the elevator button. He stood right by Liu Ruyan's side, looking like her little bodyguard. Liu Ruyan walked over to me, and whispered, "You did that on purpose today." Staring straight at our reflections in the elevator doors, I replied, "And you bringing him along? Was that supposed to be an accident?" Her eyes darted away nervously. "I brought him here strictly for work." "For work?" I scoffed. "And does your work require him to speak up for you, too?" She instinctively glanced back at Makoto Ito, but he immediately dropped his head, pretending he didn't hear a thing. Liu Ruyan lowered her voice even more. "Don't start a scene here." I didn't push it any further. The elevator arrived, and I stepped inside first. Liu Ruyan followed right behind me. Makoto Ito tried to step in too, but I raised my arm and blocked him. I looked straight at him and ordered, "You, take the stairs." Makoto Ito's face went absolutely pale. "But, this is the 20th floor. You know the way down," I stated flatly. She glared at me, her eyes practically blazing with fury. She hissed indignantly, "Do you really have to treat him like this? Is that really necessary?" I hit the button for the first floor and replied, "Are you feeling sorry for him?" She gritted her teeth and said, Don't say things so horribly. The elevator descended. The numbers dropped floor by floor. Her hands gripped her purse strap tightly. Her knuckles turning white. I didn't say another word. Some people think playing humble gets them off the hook. And some think that just because we eat at the same table, they're suddenly on my level. They'll figure out soon enough that being remembered by me is never a good thing. The moment the doors opened, Liu Ruyan stormed out first. Her pace was fast, but I didn't chase her. I didn't call her name, either. The car was waiting at the entrance. The driver opened the back door for me, but Liu Ruyan didn't get in. She stood at the bottom of the steps, turning her back to me as she made a call. She kept her voice extremely low, as if terrified I might hear. I got into the car and shut the door. Just as the window was rolling up, she glanced back at me. Her eyes were full of resentment and complete defiance. I told the driver to just go. When I got home, the lights were on. Liu Ruyan had already beaten me back. She hung up her coat and stood dead center in the living room, as if waiting for me to speak first. I changed my shoes and washed my hands, taking my sweet time. She finally snapped and demanded, "What the hell was your problem today? Rejecting my project outright in front of everyone. How am I supposed to show my face now?" I looked up at her and said, "Aren't you already an expert at showing your face? You took such incredible care of your darling junior colleague, after all." Her face darkened. "You're bringing that up again?" I shrugged and replied, "You asked me what my problem was, so I'm telling you. You have zero sense of boundaries. It's that simple." She scoffed angrily. "Boundaries? You blame absolutely everything on that. Are you out of your mind?" I didn't bother arguing. I just turned and walked toward the study. She chased after me and blocked the doorway. "Don't walk away." She glared at me, saying, "You just want me to grovel, don't you? Fine, I'll grovel. I've already compromised more than enough. What more do you want?" I stopped in my tracks. I looked right at her and said, "Compromised?" I shot back, "You consider this a compromise?" She pursed her lips, her eyes darting away for a second. But she quickly hardened her gaze again. "I admit I wasn't thoughtful enough. But you had no right to humiliate me like that. That whole thing with the 10 pounds of shrimp. Don't you think you went way too far?" "No, I don't." I fired back. "If you think casually peeling shrimp for another man isn't going too far, then making you peel 10 pounds of shrimp is perfectly fair. At most, I'd say, thanks for the hard work." She was left completely speechless. Her face darkened even more as she snapped, "All I did was peel a shrimp. And you're blowing this up into some massive issue of principle. Aren't you overreacting?" She sounded so incredibly self-righteous, which was just fine by me. I pushed open the study door and walked right in. I shut it behind me. She knocked twice on the wood and yelled, "Ji Boda, don't you dare pretend you can't hear me." I didn't say another word. She eventually gave up and stopped making a scene that night. The living room lights stayed on until late into the night. I just slept in the study. I got up at 6 in the morning. After washing up and changing into my clothes, I walked out. She was already sitting at the dining table, with dark bags under her tired eyes. The moment she saw me, she spoke up. I was too harsh last night. I admit I was out of line. But you have to give me a chance to explain." Her voice had noticeably softened, but I just grabbed my jacket and put it on. "You don't need to explain anything," I said coldly. She froze for a second, before asking, What do you mean?" I walked over to the entryway and stopped. I looked back at her and said, "We're getting a divorce." Furious, she swiped her water glass off the table. The water spilled right over the edge, and splashed all over the floor. She shot up from her chair, her face twisting in rage. "What did you just say?" She shrieked. "Are you seriously threatening me with a divorce?" I kept my tone deadpan. "I'm not threatening you." She took 2 hurried steps forward, trying to grab my arm. She yelled, "You're asking for a divorce over something this trivial? Ji Boda, aren't you being way too impulsive?" I simply raised my wrist, glanced at my watch, and said, "I have a meeting at 9 o'clock. If you want to fight about this, call my lawyer." Her expression completely shattered. "Your lawyer? You've already contacted a lawyer?" I didn't deny it. Her fingers twitched, like it finally hit her that I wasn't just blowing off steam. She asked, her voice shaking, Are you serious?" "I'm always serious when I make a decision," I replied. She gritted her teeth, her eyes welling up with red. But she forced back her tears and spat out, "Just because of Makoto Ito? I don't believe you." She interrogated me. "Have you secretly hated me this whole time? You've been wanting a divorce forever, haven't you? So now you're just pinning everything on me." I stared right at her and scoffed. "You are the one who brought him into our lives. You let him stand right beside you, and you let him fight your battles. This was entirely your choice. We're adults, and adults have to pay the price for their choices." She immediately shot back. "He only went with me to negotiate a business deal." I fired right back. "Oh? And does closing a business deal require him to get offended on your behalf, and start lecturing me?" She choked on her words for a split second, then quickly shifted gears. "You're just a control freak. You can't stand it when I interact with any other man." I didn't smile, and I didn't get angry either. "You can interact with men," I said calmly. "But what counts as interacting? Chatting is interacting. Peeling shrimp is interacting. Sleeping together is also interacting. Interactions have boundaries. And right now, it's you. Crossing the line without even realizing it. Liu Ruyan's chest heaved violently. Her voice grew shrill. Who are you to decide what crosses the line? Peeling shrimp is crossing the line? Do you honestly think that just because I married you, my whole life has to revolve around you? I didn't bother arguing with her anymore. I grabbed the door handle and said, once you sign the papers and we finish the paperwork, you can interact with anyone however you want. She rushed to the doorway, blocking my path. I'm not signing. It doesn't matter if you sign or not, I replied. If a settlement doesn't work, I'll just take it to court. Panic flickered in her eyes, but she stubbornly shot back. You wouldn't dare? What good would doing that even do for you? Aren't you the one who cares the most about your public image? I pulled the door open and said, times have changed, Liu Ruyan. A divorce won't hurt my image. She gripped the door frame, her knuckles turning white. Ji Boda, don't you forget that our marriage is a business alliance. If you divorce me, how are you going to explain this to our families? I'll handle the explanations, I said. She looked at me in disbelief, shocked that I could be so indifferent. I didn't stick around. I walked out and got into my car. Not long after I drove off, my assistant sent a document to my tablet. It was the first draft of the divorce settlement prepared by my lawyer. I skimmed through it. The terms were crystal clear. We would each keep our premarital assets, and the joint property would be split proportionally. As for the house in both our names, she would receive a cash buyout. Everything was laid out in black and white, with absolutely no unfair division of assets. There were no hidden tricks to make things hard for her. I don't stoop to that level. I just wanted a clean break from her. At 10:30 in the morning, the lawyer arrived at the office, and we went over the details of the document in the conference room. Mr. G, if Ms. Liu refuses to agree to the terms, we can take this to court, he said. However, a mutual settlement would be much more efficient for you. I nodded. Let's try the settlement first. Give her 1 day to decide. The lawyer hesitated. Isn't 1 day a bit too short? It's plenty, I replied. Around noon, Liu Ruyan's call finally came through. I picked up. Her voice sounded incredibly strained. Liu Ruyan asked, did you send someone over with this settlement? Yes, I replied. And you're really only giving me 1 day? She bit her lip and asked, what do you think our marriage is? A business deal? You can choose not to sign it. I said, then we'll just take it to court. She fell silent for a few seconds. Breathing heavily, she said, are you doing this just to force an apology out of me? I replied, an apology isn't what I need. I said, you know me. I have zero tolerance for this kind of filth. What I need is a clean relationship. The other end of the line went terribly quiet. It took her a while to reply. Are you really not going to leave me any room? I gave you room. I said, you just didn't take it seriously. Her voice began to tremble. I didn't cheat. I didn't do anything wrong. What gives you the right to treat me like this? I didn't give her a long lecture, nor did I try to reason with her. I simply replied with one sentence. You think you didn't do anything. Because your moral compass is twisted to begin with. The fact that you think you did nothing wrong is exactly the problem. She seemed triggered by that. Suddenly raising her voice, she demanded, then tell me, where is the problem? Spell it out. But I didn't have the patience for her nonsense. I said, I'm not a broken record. She paused for half a second, as if trying to latch onto something, and said, enunciating every single word. Just because I peeled shrimp for him that day, you threw such a fit. Do you think I'm dirty now? Am I really that despicable to you? I said, you have no boundaries. She let out a cold laugh. Boundaries? What kind of boundaries do you expect from me? He's my junior. He needed help. Is it a crime for me to just lend a hand? I said, there are plenty of ways to help. You chose the one that crossed the line the most. Looking like I'd hit a sore spot. Her voice faltered, but then she fired back. You're just making a mountain out of a molehill. I didn't keep arguing. I said, give the lawyer your answer by 5 p.m. With that, I hung up the phone. At 3 p.m. Liu Ruyan showed up at the office. This time, she didn't barge in. After the receptionist announced her, and she got my permission, she came up. She wasn't wearing any makeup today, and her face was pale. As if she didn't have the energy to dress up, but her back was still ramrod straight. Stubbornly clinging to that little bit of pride that refused to bow down. Ji Boda, she stood in front of my desk and slammed the agreement right onto it. She demanded, what is the meaning of this? I leaned back in my chair and said, if you don't understand it, ask the lawyer. She glared at me and said, you're giving me money? Giving me a cash buyout for the house? Trying to look generous, huh? I looked up and said, it's just the proper division of our shared assets. She bit her lip, her voice dropping a little as she asked, do you really think this makes me grateful to you? I don't need your gratitude, I said. You just need to sign it. Tears welled up in her eyes. But they didn't fall. Are you really done with me? She asked. I corrected her. I'm just scrubbing the filth out of my life. She snapped her head up, saying, what did I ever do to wrong you? After marrying you, I've always made you look good in public, and I've never caused any trouble at home. You say I have no boundaries, but have you ever stopped to think That you never even treated me like a human being? To you, I'm just a pretty little decoration. She finally lost control of her emotions. Her voice trembled, and her hands were shaking. I looked right at her. Completely unfazed, I said, a decoration wouldn't cross the line. She looked as though my words had physically pierced her. Her face draining of color. Are you really this heartless? She asked. I replied, I'm not heartless. I just feel unsettled. She stared at me dead in the eyes, as if she was still waiting for me to cave. Waiting for me to say, as long as you're willing to change, we can still make this work. But I didn't. I set the pen down in front of her and said, enunciating every single word. Just sign it, I said. We can finalize the paperwork today. Her trembling fingers slowly reached out, then hovered in midair. She pursed her lips, and said, and what if? What if I refuse? You're free to refuse, I told her. The outcome will be exactly the same. It'll just drag things out. The look in her eyes finally shifted. It wasn't anger, nor was it resentment. It was a sudden, hollow kind of despair. She slowly sat back down and picked up the pen. The tip of the pen hovered over the paper for a long time. Ji Boda, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Are you really not going to regret this? I didn't give her a direct answer. I just said, I'm not exactly short on women. Her hand jerked, leaving a sharp scratch across the paper. I finished my sentence. My tone as flat as if we were just negotiating a business deal. I said, what I am short on, are clean ones. Her eyes were completely bloodshot. She finally dragged the pen to sign her name on the agreement. The moment she finished, her hand slumped against the edge of the desk, as if all the life had been drained right out of her. She looked up at me, her lips totally pale. She said, so, you weren't just threatening me this time. I gathered up the agreement, hit the intercom button, and said, send the lawyer in. The day the divorce was finalized, I had the driver take a detour back to the old family estate, just to set the record straight. It was a business alliance between our two families, not a romance. Once the formalities were done, I just gave them the usual polite excuses. We weren't meant to be. Our personalities clashed, wishing each other the absolute best going forward. Her elders didn't look too happy about it, but no one pushed for the messy details. They cared way more about the final outcome and the profit margins anyway. And the answer I gave them was crystal clear. Liu Ruyan didn't come back to my place. She moved right back into her old apartment from before we got engaged. The location is pretty good, and the interior is nice enough. She bought the place herself. She probably thought she was just changing her address, that her social circle was still intact, that her career was completely untouched. But the very next morning, my assistant handed me a partnership contact list. There were 2 projects where Liu Ruyan was originally heading the communication with the university. Her name was right there on the partner list. I just flipped to the last page, took my pen, and crossed out a few lines. I told him, change the point of contact. From now on, for any collaborations with the university, we only deal directly with the institution. No more individual liaisons. My assistant nodded. He didn't ask any questions. I didn't go out of my way to do anything extra. I just severed any professional ties linked to her. That same afternoon, Chen Dai came by the office to discuss a new project. Halfway through our chat, he casually brought it up. Why has Ms. Liu been so quiet these past 2 days? I've been messaging her about the progress, but she's barely replying. I slid the contract across the desk toward him and said, she's no longer in charge of those projects. Chen Dai paused for a second, then smiled. Understood, he said. He didn't pry any further. Smart men know exactly when to keep their mouths shut. On the 3rd day, Liu Ruyan finally came looking for me. Not at the office, but at the private club I usually frequent. She was waiting for me right at the entrance. She was dressed impeccably, but she had faint dark circles under her eyes. Her smile was as proper as always, though you could tell it was taking an effort to keep it up. Can we talk? She asked. I didn't even break my stride. I just kept walking inside and said, the agreement is already signed. We have nothing left to talk about. She hurried a few steps to catch up. I'm not here to beg for us to get back together. I stopped, turned my head to look at her, and asked, then what are you doing here? She bit her lower lip. The projects. Did you have someone replace me? I only gave her a single word in reply. Yes. I didn't offer a single word of explanation. Liu Ruyan instantly lost her cool. She furrowed her brows. I was the one who negotiated those partnerships. My mentors are asking why I was suddenly pulled off the team. I can't even explain it to them. I stared right at her. The only reason you need an explanation right now is because you're so used to throwing my name around to get things done. The color drained from her face. Liu Ruyan bit her lip. I earned it through my own ability, she insisted. Not through your status. I didn't even bother arguing with her. I just said, well, if it really was your own ability, then just go talk to them. Why come crying to me? She froze, choked by my words. After a long while, she forced out, you're targeting me. I stepped into the elevator and said, you think way too highly of yourself. You aren't in that position. So naturally, it's not your place to negotiate. Right before the elevator doors closed, she suddenly reached out and blocked them. Ji Boda. Her voice trembled. What do you want from me? What will make you happy? I looked at her fingers caught in the door gap, my tone completely deadpan. I said, I don't need you to make me happy. The elevator doors forced shut, making her stumble backward. That night, my assistant brought something up. Mr. G. Madam, I mean, Ms. Liu sighed. The hosts of the university corporate forum said her seat was cancelled. The invitation was redirected to another professor. I just hummed. With resources no longer flowing her way, her seat would naturally go to someone else. Over the next few days, Liu Ruyan completely lost her composure. Her fully planned schedule, lectures, exchanges, meetings, and corporate visits, were all completely thrown into chaos. After all, she was never the one calling the shots for these projects. It all depended on whether others were willing to give her the resources. If they were willing, she had the right to take them. If they weren't, she wouldn't even get a seat at the table. She called me once. I didn't answer. She sent another text message. Let's meet. I didn't reply. I had no need to keep up appearances with my ex-wife. 1 week later, Liu Ruyan showed up in the lobby of a partner company. I had investments in the Xing family's company. The percentage wasn't high, but I had my people on the board. She was there to discuss a joint university project. Normally, she would have been let right in. Instead, the receptionist stopped her. It wasn't a rude rejection, but it was so incredibly polite she couldn't even find an excuse to get mad. Professor Liu. You aren't on today's meeting list, the receptionist smiled warmly. The manager is in a meeting right now, so they probably won't have time to see you. How about you leave the documents here, and we'll pass them on. The smile on Liu Ruyan's face completely vanished. You guys just confirmed last week that I was the point of contact. The receptionist remained perfectly polite. Then perhaps the point of contact has been changed. Liu Ruyan stood frozen in the lobby, gripping her phone tightly. She called the manager right then and there. It rang for a long time before someone picked up. A very low voice came from the other end. Professor Liu, I'm so sorry. We've had some last-minute adjustments on our end. We are absolutely still willing to collaborate, but the contact person has changed. Please don't make this hard for me. Changed to who? She demanded. The other side paused for 2 seconds before answering. Someone from Mr. G's side. Liu Ruyan's face instantly went deathly pale. She didn't lose her temper that day. She just lowered her phone, turned around, and walked away. Her footsteps were rushed, as if she was terrified someone would see how pathetic she looked. The very next day, she went to see her mentor. Liu Ruyan's mentor was a mild-tempered old professor. He usually chose his words carefully, but that day, her mentor just asked a single question. Are you letting your personal problems spill over into your work? Liu Ruyan's lips trembled slightly as she replied, no. Her mentor looked at her, let out a heavy sigh, and said, I don't care what kind of drama is going on at home, but right now, nobody is cutting you any slack anymore. You need to think hard about why that is. Liu Ruyan's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. She wanted to argue back, but realized she didn't have a single shred of proof to defend herself. Everyone's attitude toward her hadn't changed, yet, it had changed completely. Before, they would actively help her out of an awkward spot. Now, they were just politely backing away. This kind of distancing hurt the most, because it didn't look like an attack. It just looked like they were doing things by the book. She started trying to salvage the situation in other ways. She reached out to corporate executives she used to have tea with, trying to ask them out for dinner. Trying to set up a meeting. But they would just reply politely, I've been really swamped lately. Let's take a rain check. Then she went to the wealthy wives she used to get along so well with at dinner parties. But they also politely brushed her off, saying, my kids have been sick recently. Let's take a rain check. In a single day, she'd get a dozen rain checks. But couldn't lock down a single dinner. She finally realized, most of the people she thought were her friends were only giving her the time of day because she was Mrs. G. Once the title was gone, the doors closed right along with it. She started to panic. She scrolled through her entire phone contacts, calling anyone she could reach, meeting anyone willing to see her. But the harder she tried, the more desperate she looked. She was no longer someone people looked up to. She had suddenly turned into someone who had to beg for favors. This feeling made her sick to her stomach. She held out for a few days. Until finally, she called Ito Makoto. The first time, no one picked up. She called a second time. Still no answer. She sent him a message. I want to see you. Come out and meet me. Half an hour later, Makoto replied with a single text. Senior. I'm busy. Let's talk later. She stared at that let's talk later, her fingers turning ice cold. She went to his university to look for him, waiting downstairs at the lab building for a long time. Then she saw him walk out of the side door, accompanied by 2 classmates. When he saw her, his footsteps visibly slowed down for a split second. Then, pretending he hadn't noticed her at all, he kept his head down and continued walking forward. Liu Ruyan quickly chased after him and grabbed his sleeve. Makoto, she demanded, are you avoiding me? His 2 classmates froze for a second, tactfully exchanged glances, and hurried off. Only then did he turn around, wearing an awkward, strained smile. Senior, what are you doing here? Liu Ruyan bit her lip. I called you and you didn't answer. What exactly are you so busy with that you can't even text me back? He gently pulled his sleeve out of her grasp. The movement wasn't aggressive, but it was very obvious. He said, Senior, I really have been super busy lately. He added, the professor is really breathing down our necks. I still need to go report my progress. Liu Ruyan interrupted, speaking rapidly. That dinner party the other night, did you say something to Ji Boda? Ito Makoto immediately waved his hands defensively. I didn't say anything. Liu Ruyan took a step closer. You called him, don't even try to deny it. Ito Makoto's face instantly dropped. But he quickly put his innocent act back on. He said, Senior, I just didn't want you two fighting over me. I wanted to help smooth things over between you. He lowered his voice. I meant well at the time. I really meant well. Liu Ruyan let out a cold laugh. If you really meant well, then why didn't you ask me first? Ito Makoto's eyes darted away guiltily. I just didn't think that far ahead. Liu Ruyan stared at him, as if she was truly seeing him for the very first time. She said, I've been taken off my projects. My position has been revoked. I can't even get an audience with anyone. Her voice tightened. You say you meant well? Then can you help me now? Ito Makoto's shoulders twitched, shrinking back ever so slightly. Senior, how could I possibly help with something like this? His voice grew even fainter. Once Mr. G makes a decision, no one can change his mind. Liu Ruyan's eyes instantly welled up with tears. She bit her lip. You were so full of words that night, weren't you? Weren't you so good at airing my grievances? And now that I actually need you, you're telling me there's nothing you can do? A flash of impatience crossed Ito Makoto's face, though he quickly suppressed it. He sighed, Senior, don't be like this. You two are a married couple. Couples fight, but they always make up in the end. Just go sweet talk him a little, and it'll be fine. Weren't you always the best at handling these kinds of relationships? That sentence twisted into Liu Ruyan's heart like a jagged knife. Liu Ruyan's expression completely froze. Sweet talk him? She repeated the word numbly. What makes you think I have anything left to sweet talk him with? Ito Makoto stayed silent, and that silence was louder than any answer. It wasn't that he didn't understand. He had just started calculating the pros and cons. In that moment, a harsh truth dawned on Liu Ruyan. Ito Makoto had gotten close to her. Never because of who she was. He did it for the doors she could open for him. Now that those doors were slammed shut, he obviously had no interest in standing outside in the freezing cold. Liu Ruyan slowly uncurled her fists. Her voice turned to ice. Just go. Ito Makoto looked like he had been waiting for those exact words. He nodded immediately. Senior, take good care of yourself. With that, he turned on his heel and walked away. He walked fast, like he was terrified she might cling to him again. Liu Ruyan stood frozen in place, her face a frightening, deathly pale. She wanted to call out to him, but the words died in her throat. Suddenly, she found it absolutely hilarious. She thought she had been taking care of a sweet junior, when in reality, she had just been raising an ungrateful, backstabbing snake. And when that snake slithered away, he didn't even bother to look back at her once. As for the fallout on Liu Ruyan's end, I didn't go out of my way to ask about it. Her former dignity, her whole social circle, all of it was just gone. This was the expected outcome. I didn't need to keep tabs on her situation, nor did I need to take pleasure in her misery. The reason I made my move was never to see her suffer, but to chop off the hand of the guy who was overreaching. Makoto Ito thought that just because one door closed, he could just go knock on another one. He actually thought he was being clever. He knew how to act humble, how to sweet talk, and how to smooth talk his way out of taking responsibility, brushing everything off as just a misunderstanding. As if that meant no one could touch him. But in the real world, nobody has the time to debate your excuses. That afternoon, I had my assistant drop a file on my desk. It wasn't blackmail, nor did I need to use any dirty tricks. It was just a few registration forms for public events, RSVP receipts, and some event coordination emails. Along with a few delivery receipts. They were all paper trails he had left behind himself. He had used Ruyan Lu's name to reach out to a company, claiming they were doing a joint university corporate project showcase, and asking them to sponsor a booth. The company CC'd their contact to the head of partnerships on my end. The email spelled it out clearly, Professor Lu's team, with student Ito handling the execution. The thing is, my side had never agreed to any joint venture. He had even given himself a title on the registration form, G Group Partnership Coordinator. A title like that might not seem like much, but it was more than enough to make outsiders think he had my authorization. My assistant asked me, do you want us to send an official letter to clear this up? I replied, no need. Sending a letter is like slapping someone from across the room. It might be loud, but it's not direct enough. I wanted him to lose every last shred of his dignity, right in front of everyone. 2 days later, there was an industry networking event. It was held at the newly built convention center downtown. The organizer was the Electronics Association. The attendees included both corporate companies and universities, as well as a few foundation representatives. Ruyan Lu used to show up at these kinds of events all the time. She was a good speaker, and presented herself well. so it was easy for her to be treated as the face of the university. But she wasn't there this time. The one who showed up was Makoto Ito. When I walked into the hall, he was bustling around near the edge of the exhibition area. He had a badge hanging around his neck that read, University Representative. He was wearing a suit, though the sleeves were a bit too long. And his tie was knotted tight. He had this look of forced, desperate professionalism on his face. When he saw me, he visibly froze. He stopped dead in his tracks, completely blindsided by my showing up. But he quickly forced a smile, hurrying over to me. Mr. Ji, you're here too? He kept his voice low, saying, I didn't expect to run into you here. I completely ignored his little greeting. My eyes swept past him to the booth sign behind his back. It had the university's name on it, with 2 corporate logos slapped right next to it. And one of those logos belonged to the very company I had invested in. I looked at him and asked, Are you in charge of this booth? His eyes darted away nervously as he replied, I'm just here to help out. I raised an eyebrow. Help out? He tried to help and somehow ended up as the university representative. His smile completely froze. 2 association members happened to walk by and heard what I just said. Their footsteps slowed. Makoto Ito immediately lowered his voice and said, Mr. Ji, can we talk about this in private? I looked right at him. Don't you love speaking on behalf of other people? But now that it's about you, suddenly you want to take it private? His face instantly flushed red. I didn't mean it like that. He hurriedly explained, I was just worried it might ruin my senior. I mean, Professor Liu's reputation. He was still clinging to Professor Liu, as if simply dropping her name would magically keep him under her protection. I completely ignored him. I walked straight toward the center of the main venue. The networking event had a project roadshow segment. Few organizations were scheduled to present their collaborative results and future plans on stage. Makoto Ito was up third. His name was printed clear as day in the event brochure, University Project Execution Representative. I sat in the front row, right next to the association's Secretary General and 2 corporate directors. When the host introduced the third speaker, Makoto Ito walked up to the stage. He gripped the microphone, took a deep breath, bowed, and said, Respected professors, corporate partners, good afternoon, everyone. I am Makoto Ito, representing. Before he could even finish, whispers broke out across the audience. Because the project title he announced was almost identical to the one Ruyan Liu had pitched earlier. He had merely tweaked the subtitle. Then, he flipped his slide deck to page 2. The footer proudly displayed, Joint Presentation, Ji Corporation Collaborative Project. I heard the corporate director next to me clear his throat. He turned to look at me. I calmly set my pen down. I raised my hand to signal the host. The host was taken aback for a second, but still walked over and handed me the microphone. Do you have a question, sir? I stood up. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly across the entire hall. I spoke up. I have a few points that need clarification. Number 1. Was this project ever authorized to use our corporation's name for a joint presentation? Up on stage, Makoto Ito's expression instantly dropped. His grip on the mic tightened, then loosened. His lips went completely pale. The host glanced at the Secretary General, who looked just as shocked. Obviously, nobody saw this coming. I continued. Number 2. Mr. Ito listed himself as the collaborative project coordinator in the registration forms. May I ask exactly who appointed him to this position? And where are the official appointment documents? The entire hall fell dead silent in seconds. People started frantically flipping through their event brochures. Others stared pointedly at Makoto Ito on stage. Makoto Ito's eyes darted around in absolute panic. Forcing a stiff smile, he stammered. Mr. Ji, there must be a typo from the event staff. I'm just a student. How could I possibly? Then explain point number 3. I cut him off sharply. When reaching out to corporate partners, you used Ruyan Liu's name. You copied our executives on emails, claiming it was Professor Liu's team, with student Ito acting as the primary executor. Tell me, who exactly gave you the authority to write that? Makoto Ito's Adam's apple bobbed hard. He opened his mouth to defend himself, only to realize that anything he said would instantly contradict itself. Playing the innocent, humble student wasn't going to save him here. The host looked incredibly awkward and quickly tried to smooth things over, saying, There might be a slight misunderstanding here. Let's discuss this after the meeting. I raised my hand to stop him. I said, A misunderstanding is fine, but there has to be a reason for it. I looked straight at Makoto Ito on the stage and said, Makoto, you can explain yourself right now, in front of everyone. Have you been using your status as Ruyan Liu's junior to pass yourself off as the university's official point of contact? Makoto Ito's face went completely pale. He instinctively glanced out at the audience, as if desperately searching for a lifeline. But Ruyan wasn't there. He couldn't find her shadow. A corporate representative in the audience frowned. If this is actually true, we're going to have to reassess the risks of this partnership. Someone from the foundation chimed in as well. It's fine for a student representative to take the stage, but you can't make promises to the public without actual authorization. Makoto panicked. He pulled the microphone close to his mouth, his voice trembling. I didn't make any promises. I was just handling the operations. I thought Professor Liu had tacitly agreed. Tacitly agreed? I repeated the words. I pulled out my phone, opened an email, and handed it to the Secretary General sitting next to me. This is the contact email you sent out, I said. It mentions a joint presentation with the G Group. Did you add that yourself, or did someone tell you to do it? The Secretary General glanced at it, and his expression instantly darkened. Seeing the Secretary General's face, Makoto's panic became even more obvious. He desperately tried to spin his actions as good intentions. He stammered. I really didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to make the project better. I wanted to pool the resources. I cut him off. Resources aren't just something you can grab because you feel like it. I stood right where I was, keeping my tone dead calm. If you want resources, you apply for them through the proper channels. If you want a joint presentation, you get official authorization. Right now, you're using someone else's name, someone else's connections. Makoto's eyes welled up with tears. He forced himself to keep talking. But I've worked so hard too. I'm in the lab running experiments and writing reports every single day. I just wanted everyone to see the results. The audience responded with dead silence. Hard work is a stepping stone, not a get out of jail free card. The host looked over at me, clearly desperate to wrap this segment up. I decided not to press the attack, but I made sure to drop one final sentence, letting everyone know exactly where the boundaries lay. I stated clearly, effective immediately. All joint presentations between our side and this project are suspended. If any associations or corporate partners need to get in touch, please reach out directly to our designated representatives. The updated contact list will be provided after the meeting. I finished speaking and sat back down. A smattering of applause broke out across the room, but it quickly faded. That applause wasn't for me. It was a demand for Makoto to properly explain himself. But up on stage, he just stood there clutching the microphone, looking like his spine had been ripped out, completely frozen. The host bit the bullet and took back control. Right, well, let's move on to our next guest speaker. As Makoto stepped off the stage, his legs were visibly shaking. He almost missed a step, stumbling toward the edge of the aisle. He tried to head out, but was stopped again by two event staff. They asked him to go to the office to provide some missing documents. He looked up, catching my eye. For the first time, there was no fawning in his eyes, just sheer panic and resentment. I didn't return his gaze. I simply turned my head, continuing my conversation about the project with the executive next to me. That little interruption earlier was nothing more than me brushing a piece of trash off the table. After the meeting wrapped up, quite a few people passed by me. They all paused for a moment to say hello. Someone asked me, Mr. G, that young man from earlier, isn't he the junior colleague of your wife, Ms. Liu? I replied, he used to be. The man instantly understood. He murmured, ah, I see. Someone else was much more blunt with me. That guy is absolute scum. If you hadn't been here today, we all would have been played by him. I didn't entertain the gossip, only saying, just stick to standard protocol from now on. As I walked out of the venue, Makoto Ito was standing by the window at the far end of the corridor, his face completely ashen. He'd even forgotten to button his suit. Seeing me approach, he looked like a wild animal backed into a corner. Mr. G, he rasped out, why did you have to expose me in front of all those people? I stopped, leaving just a single step between us. I told him, you brazenly hijacked my company's name in front of all those people. Yet you felt no shame? He stammered, completely lost for words. Finally, he choked out a single excuse. I thought you wouldn't stoop to my level. I looked right at him and said, you're no match for me. And you're right, you aren't worth my time. But you overstepped your boundaries. And now, you have to pay the price. He gritted his teeth. What about Ms. Liu? She's brought me to plenty of events before. Are you going to go after her too? Her issues will be dealt with separately from yours. I cut in. Those words hit him like a bucket of ice water. Makoto finally realized that even Ruyan Liu couldn't protect him anymore. He opened his mouth to argue, but someone behind him called him over to sign some papers. In the split second he turned around. The group of people who had been buddy-buddy with him earlier immediately scattered, treating him like a walking plague. He stood there frozen, his lips completely pale. His eyes went totally blank for a moment. I walked down to the parking garage. Before getting into the car, my assistant asked, Mr. G, should we proceed with the next phase? I replied, there's no need. Pushing someone off their pedestal doesn't always require brute force. I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes. Once a man loses the right to be trusted, every explanation just sounds like an excuse. After that spectacle at the convention center, my phone stayed perfectly quiet for 2 days. On the evening of the third day, my assistant handed me a visitor log. There's a Ms. Liu downstairs. She's asking to see you. I didn't even look up as I said, send her up. My assistant hesitated for a moment. She doesn't have an appointment. I know. I set my pen down. And repeated, send her up. 10 minutes later, Liu Ruyan appeared at the door of my office. She was dressed plainly, a simple white blouse paired with a black skirt. Her hair was tied back, and she wore barely any makeup. She looked like she had lost weight, and the dark circles under her eyes were glaringly obvious. Yet, she still held her head high. She stood in the doorway, not bothering with the usual small talk like she used to. She walked in, closed the door, and stood right in front of my desk. Ji Boda. Her voice was a little hoarse. I want to talk to you. I didn't offer her a seat. Speak, I said. She placed her bag on the back of the chair, her hands clasped tightly together, her fingertips turning slightly pale. I know you don't want to hear my excuses, she said. I'm not going to make any. I just want to ask you one thing. Have you completely made up your mind to not give me a single chance? I stared at her. Deep down, you already know the answer to that. She fell silent for a couple of seconds, then nodded. But I still wanted to hear it from you. I closed the file in front of me and said slowly, I already gave you a chance. Her lips trembled slightly before she spoke. Then what if I'm willing to change? I didn't answer right away. Treating my silence as an opening, she rushed to say, I can change. I really can. I'll cut off all contact with Makoto Ito. I won't bring him along to any events. I won't let him anywhere near us ever again. Whatever you think I did wrong, I'll do exactly as you ask. She said it with such absolute conviction, as if she was submitting a formal business proposal. I looked at her and asked, why are you telling me all this now? She froze for a second. For us. I let out a soft, bitter chuckle. Shaking my head, I replied, we are already done. Everything you're saying right now is just you wanting things to go back to how they used to be. Her eyes welled up with tears, her voice dropping to a whisper. I just don't want to be replaced. I raised my eyes to meet hers. The only person you've ever cared about is yourself. It was as if I had hit a nerve. She scrambled to deny it. No, I'm not. Yes, you are, I said coldly. You're addicted to the status of being Mrs. G. You're used to everyone treating you with such deference. Used to everyone treating you like some high society trophy. Now that you've lost all of that, you're desperate to claw it back. Her shoulders gave a slight shudder. But I truly do regret it, she pleaded, looking up at me. The whole thing about peeling the shrimp, it was my fault. She had finally admitted the real issue, but her tone of apology still sounded like she was talking about some trivial mistake that could easily be fixed. I ignored her remorse. I just asked, what exactly do you regret? She opened her mouth and said, I regret making you misunderstand. I regret not considering your feelings. I regret not putting myself in your shoes at the dinner party that day. I looked at her and said, you're still missing the whole point. She got anxious and asked, then what is it? What do you want to hear? I stood up, walked around the table to the window, and said, you thought peeling shrimp for him was no big deal, I said. You thought him speaking up for you was no big deal. You thought bringing him to my dinner party was no big deal. You've always believed that as long as you didn't kiss, as long as you didn't sleep with him, it wasn't cheating. And it definitely wasn't crossing the line. Liu Ruyan's face slowly turned deadly pale. I turned to look at her and said, that is the problem. She gritted her teeth. Fine, then I admit I crossed the line now, okay? Admitting it isn't the hard part, I said. The hard part was getting you to realize it when you were taking everything for granted. A single tear finally rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away, moving quickly, as if she was afraid I'd see it. She said, I really will change. Her voice trembled. I'll keep my distance from other guys from now on. I'll draw the boundaries crystal clear. I looked at her, keeping my voice completely calm. Did you really think that just because you're changing, I'm obligated to take you back? She froze. That's not what I meant. She panicked. I just didn't want things to end up like this. But they already have, I said. She looked up, panic flashing in her eyes, mixed with resentment. Are you seeing someone else? She asked. I didn't answer. She immediately seized on my silence, pressing hard. Your silence means yes. Ji Boda, we haven't even been divorced that long, and you're already. I cut her off. Did you come here to talk about your own mess, or to interrogate me? Her face went pale, then flushed with embarrassment. After a long pause, she took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. Fine, I won't ask about that. I just want to know, can you give me one more chance? I didn't beat around the bush. I gave it to her straight. No. Her lips trembled, as if she'd just taken a heavy punch to the chest. Why? She choked back a sob. Our 2-year marriage. You're just throwing it all away? I only made this mistake once. I said, you didn't just make a mistake once. She froze. I walked back to the desk. I took a few documents out of the drawer and set them on the desk. The first one was a photocopy of the guest list from that dinner. It had her name on it, along with Ito Makoto listed as her +1. The second was an email about a change in partnership from her advisor's side. Both she and Ito Makoto were copied on it. The message was simple. The point of contact was being replaced, and the reasons were undisclosed. The third was a screenshot of Ito Makoto's registration form for that exhibition. His job title was clearly written right there. Liu Ruyan stared at the papers. Her eyes slowly lost their focus. Her voice came out hoarse. Why are you showing me this? To make you understand something. I said, it wasn't just a one-off thing. It was an entire pattern. She snapped her head up. Her eyes flashing with anger, she said. What Ito Makoto did wasn't on my orders. I know, I replied. Her expression softened just a little, like she had finally grabbed onto a lifeline to prove her innocence. She said, then why the hell are you pinning all of this on me? I looked right at her. He only dared to use your name, because you silently allowed him to. She froze instantly. I did not. She shot back defensively. She said, I never let him use my name for anything. I tapped my finger on the desk. Then why did you let him speak for you at the dinner? Why did you let him stand right next to you, playing your protector? Why didn't you stop him, when he was standing right in front of me, going on and on about how exhausted you were? The questions choked the words right out of Liu Ruyan. She opened her mouth to explain, but realized that any excuse would just sound pathetic. Finally, she whispered, I wasn't thinking that deeply about it at the time. I cut in, correcting her. You never think that deeply. Her eyes welled up with tears. I admit I was wrong. I admit I wasn't thinking. But I'm thinking about it now. And I'm willing to change. Why are you still backing me into a corner? I'm not backing you into anything. I said, you chose this path yourself. She threw her head back up. Just one word from you, and people drop my partnerships. One word, and the forum cancels my spot. One word, and suddenly everyone is avoiding me like the plague. And you're telling me you aren't backing me into a corner? I never denied that I have that kind of power. I simply set the record straight. That isn't me forcing you. I continued, this is just what happens, when you lose that status. It's the natural consequence. The color drained completely from Liu Ruyan's face. It suddenly hit her. The thing she relied on the most wasn't me. It was the connections and doors I opened for her. Her lips were pale, and her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. Then, from now on, I'll only stand by your side. I looked at her. Have you ever? She froze in shock. I didn't stop. That night at the dinner, I sat right across from you, while you were peeling shrimp. You didn't even look at me. And later, when he called me, asking if you were tired, you didn't think there was anything wrong with that at all. You know exactly whose side you were really on. Liu Ruyan's eyes trembled, as if forced to relive those exact moments. Her voice was barely a whisper. I honestly thought you didn't care. You thought? I repeated. You just assumed. She bit her lip. Her tears fell even harder, but she kept up her stubborn front. Well, I don't think that anymore. I swear to you right now, I will never let something like this happen again, no matter the occasion. But her tears didn't move me at all. I leaned back in my chair, staring blankly at her. You're talking about the future, I said. She nodded desperately. Yes, the future. I looked right at her. I don't need your future. How can you be so heartless? She pleaded, her voice thick with tears. You were never like this before. You used to at least hear me out. I kept my eyes on her. I did hear you out. She shook her head wildly. No, you didn't listen at all. I did, I replied coldly. You said you'd change, that you'd finally learn some boundaries. You said you regret it, that you don't want to be replaced. You said you never wanted things to get this far. I paused for a second. My voice dropped, growing even colder. But all of this, you're only saying it now because you've lost everything. She froze. I kept going. You didn't come crawling back to me, because you suddenly realized what you did wrong. You came back because you suddenly realized the consequences. Liu Ruyan's breath hitched, shaking as if I had just ripped her mask off right in front of her. She desperately wanted to argue back, but couldn't find a single valid point. Finally, she played her very last card. I can get rid of Makoto Ito, she blurted out. Whether you deal with him or not, has absolutely nothing to do with me. I cut her off sharply. Stop treating your emotional breakdowns like they're a solution to this. She stared at me, stunned. Then what the hell do you want from me? She practically screamed. What do I have to do for you to just let me go? I looked at her. My voice was completely deadpan. I already have let you go. She didn't understand. Her eyes were completely blank. I pointed to the settlement agreement on the desk. The assets were divided exactly by the book. I haven't touched a single thing under your name. Your life is entirely in your own hands now. I even gave you the dignified exit you wanted. And now you're begging me to let you go. Just because you're losing your privileges, and you think I'm the one targeting you. Her lips were trembling violently. The anger in her eyes finally dissolved into sheer, genuine panic. It hit her. She didn't just want to get back together. She wanted the doors of the Ji family empire to open for her again. But I was never going to open them again. Liu Ruyan just stood there for a long time. Looking totally drained of life, she whispered brokenly. It's not that I didn't know it was wrong. I just thought you'd always forgive me. I looked at her and said, so you finally admit it. She looked up, her eyes blurred with tears, and pleaded. I really know I was wrong. I didn't bother arguing with her about the concept of right and wrong anymore. Liu Ruyan, I said, calling her by her full name. It's not that you just made a mistake once. She held her breath. I continued, it's that you never even thought it was wrong, from the very beginning. When I finished speaking, the look in her eyes completely shattered. She opened her mouth, trying to say something, But in the end, she only let out a faint gasp. She looked like she wanted to leave, but couldn't bring herself to do it, her toe nervously scuffing against the carpet. Then, what happens to me now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if she had swallowed the very last ounce of her dignity. I pressed the intercom and said, "Show our guest out." My assistant quickly walked in, politely standing by the door. Liu Ruyan glanced at the assistant, then looked back at me. Her face was pale and awful, but she still straightened her back, picked up her bag, and walked towards the door. Reaching the doorway, she paused for a second. Without turning around, she said, "Ji Boda." Her voice was so soft as she asked, "Are you really not leaving me any way out?" After Liu Ruyan left, I gathered all the documents on my desk and locked them in the drawer. It wasn't some dramatic emotional release, it was simply because the matter was finally settled. A lot of people mistakenly believe that revenge has to come with loud, emotional outbursts. Actually, it doesn't. A true reckoning usually happens the exact moment they realize you are no longer going to be a part of their life. That sudden feeling of weightlessness, it lingers far longer than any argument ever could. Over the next little while, my life went back to its normal rhythm. Meetings, business trips, pushing projects forward. Everything stayed perfectly on track. My assistant would occasionally give me some updates on the outside situation. I had no comment. As for Makoto Ito's side of things went quiet very quickly. The event guest lists he used to sneak onto started being mysteriously adjusted. Email replies to him slowed down to a crawl, and partnership offers were permanently shelved. He tried rebranding himself to make a comeback, using pathetic titles like student representative or project assistant. But nobody bought it anymore. And it wasn't because I went around blacklisting him by name. It was because after he was exposed so publicly, everyone realized one single thing. This guy has absolutely no bottom line. And for a lot of professional circles, that is a fatal flaw. Later on, I heard he left his original team. The official excuse was a change in personal career direction. As for where he actually ended up, nobody cared at all. As for Liu Ruyan, things were even quieter. She never came looking for me again. She was smart enough to know that showing up again would only humiliate her even more. She tried to piece her life back together, relying on the degree, experience, and network she already possessed. She's definitely capable, it's just that, without the powerful backing she used to enjoy. It takes time for those skills to actually translate into real success. The problem was, she was completely used to having people lift her up. And now, no one is putting her on a pedestal anymore. She has to wait in line like everyone else. That kind of fall from grace is way harder for her to swallow than a flat-out rejection. I'd run into her at public events sometimes. Not too close, not too far. Close enough to see each other, but our paths just wouldn't cross anymore. She was a lot calmer than before, kept her words carefully in check, like she finally realized that all the special treatment she took for granted was just a privilege handed to her. When she looked at me, there was no emotion left, just complete, absolute detachment. She finally understood that I was never coming back. And honestly, I never gave her a second glance either. The empty space left in the house, I was in no rush to fill it. I didn't need a new relationship to prove anything. But life moves on. I met Shen Youchu at a business dinner. She was the head of legal for our partner company. Early 30s, spoke straight to the point. Never tried to get too close. But never avoided people either. We sat at the same table. The whole night, she only talked business. Not a single personal word. When the dinner ended, she stood up, gave me a polite nod, and left without any unnecessary small talk. The very next day, she went through the proper channels, and sent the files straight to my work email. Not a single word of chit-chat. I really liked her sense of boundaries. The next few times we met, kept things completely straightforward. We talked business, finished up, and went our separate ways. Once, a meeting ran late, and she casually asked, "Wanna grab a quick bite?" Just downstairs. Her tone was completely natural. No hidden agenda. I said yes. While we were eating, she didn't pry into my past, but she didn't walk on eggshells either. She just said, "Working with you is really easy." I replied, "You have got great boundaries." She smiled and said, "That is just basic professionalism, isn't it?" After that, we started seeing each other officially. No messy talking stage, no playing hard to get. She knew exactly what I needed, and I knew exactly what she could offer. If it worked, we kept going. If it didn't, we would end it. This kind of relationship just felt easy. Not because she was necessarily better than Liu Ruyan, but because from day one, she knew exactly where she stood. Time moved forward. Things naturally settled down. I stopped hearing news about Liu Ruyan. Stopped hearing Ito Makoto's name, too. If people ever brought her up, it was just in passing. That former Mrs. G, I hear she is running her own projects now. I would just listen, give a nod, and let it go. The past is the past. There is no need to keep settling old scores. It had already stopped working. One night, I came home to a spotless kitchen. Shen Youchu was standing at the counter, placing the prepped shrimp onto a plate. Her movements were sharp. She wasn't wearing gloves. The shells were peeled off cleanly. No fancy techniques. She dropped the shrimp into the pan, turned to me, and asked, "Do you want some? Just eat it yourself." I replied. She nodded. She didn't push it. The whole time. She never invaded my space, or mindlessly shoved things in my face. She just focused on what she was doing. In that exact moment, it suddenly hit me. This so-called clean freak obsession isn't about avoiding intimacy. It's about avoiding chaos. Rejecting the gray areas. Rejecting the kind of people who cross the line. While playing the innocent card. I sat there at the table, watching her serve the food. The lighting was crisp. The aromas were clear. And I was absolutely certain of one thing. People who don't understand boundaries simply don't deserve to stand by my side.